p.m. We'll go ahead and kick off our regularly scheduled commission meeting this evening. If you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Little housekeeping this evening. We're working through some technology issues and everything for people in the room as well as people on the internet. So when you're speaking, if you would please use your microphones, that's as well as the podium. So if I interrupt you at the podium, that's all I'm trying to do is to get some microphone. All right. First item this evening is a commission orientation, and I'd like to introduce Kathy Sexton. She's from PPMC at WSU, and she's going to handle that for us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate everybody for having me here this evening. It looks like you have a long agenda, so I will try to be as brief as I can, but you have in front of you a PowerPoint that does what I hate PowerPoints to do, but it needs to do it, right? If I were just doing a PowerPoint, I would do basic slides and talk, and we'd have a great conversation, interactive. We can still do that, but I put a lot more detail in the slides so that you could take with and add to your reading pile or your reference pile for later when issues come up that you wish, hey, what did she say about XYZ? Well, let's just go look at that. So again, I appreciate y'all being here tonight and having me as a WSU person. Our role at the Public Policy Management Center is the outreach to the community, specifically cities, counties, and nonprofit organizations. We do orientations like this. We do planning and surveys and all kinds of things. My 30-some years in public service, though, was as city manager of Derby for 16 years, and before that, assistant county manager at Sedgwick County. And I even did a little stint at the state as a budget officer, budget analyst in Topeka. So that was the way we started out. So to jump right on in then today, we do have a couple of goals and objectives. We want to review roles and duties for you all as elected officials, as well as share some tips about governance best practices and effective meetings. I know a couple weeks ago you already had some legal information about meetings. Mine isn't legal. Mine is advice. Mine is about here's some best practices, some things that folks have tried and it's worked, and opposite that, right? So certainly whatever questions you have, feel free to jump in and or at the end. So to jump in then, Dr. John Nalbandian at KU. KU has the premier public management program and a master's level, and we should all as Kansans be proud of that. They've held that level, premier being across the country, number one, literally number one, for many, many years. And Dr. Nalbandian came up with these 6 items on this and the next slide as to the roles of elected officials. And it's a lot, okay? You're expected to have and develop strategic vision, thinking long-term and visionary for the community. The question I like there is what will make a significant difference? Because there's a lot of things y'all could choose to do. Everyone's always asking you to do something, and there's a lot of needs out there, but everyone has to limit what we can actually do based on resources. So what would make a significant difference? Being a community builder is something people don't talk about very much, but elected officials are that. People look up to the elected officials. They think, we elected you, now I want you to do something, right? So sometimes it is about trying to figure out what are the conversations we should be having in this community. It may not be sort of the routine stuff on your agenda twice a month, but it might be bigger picture issues, and it might be that it's not even a city government issue, but maybe it's about conversation that the folks in the faith communities could have, or the school communities, whatever. But thinking through that and thinking about what, as a city or as a community, we should be celebrating. Because I always think, you know, you do this when you do like performance reviews, right? You could always find something to criticize, but does that motivate people when you criticize them? What motivates people is when you find out what they're really good at and praise and celebrate and make it better and get more of the good stuff, right? So it's the same way with celebrating accomplishments for the community. Being a trustee and a steward, I think, is really a commonly thought of role. It's acting as an owner, thinking as a fiduciary, And then when we move on to the next slide, we have the other three. Again, pretty common ones: represent people, right? Your role is to advocate for your constituents, including listening to them, but also thinking about, okay, what's self-interest versus individual versus community good and long-term community good. I always tell people, the important, difficult decisions are not the ones you make about what you're going to see a result next month or next year. It's when you're thinking about your grandchildren. What's Newton going to be like for my grandchildren if I don't invest in XYZ kind of program or project? Of course, you're a decision maker. What you do month to month, meeting to meeting, is you make decisions, you vote. And that is important. I see sometimes with elected officials, it's hard to want to vote. It's something you'd rather abstain on. And that's difficult to do very much because you really do have a duty to vote. And obviously oversight. We're going to get into now the legal standards of governance. And this is something that has long been in the sort of the teaching for any kind of board of director. You might be on boards of nonprofit organizations, whatever, but certainly on this board, you have a duty of care, loyalty, and obedience. And those words may sound a little archaic, so they deserve a little more explanation. And so we have one slide on each of them, and you can see there's a lot of examples here that pertain to you as city council. Your role is to attend meetings. You know, if you're absent from very many, you should be looking at yourself wondering, well, should I stay on this board? When we also need to look at being informed before voting. If you're not comfortable voting because you haven't read the packet, well, obviously something needs to change in your life to make sure you have time to read the packet so you are ready to vote. Exercising your independent judgment, even though you listen to staff, to constituents, to experts, you also do need to exercise independent judgment. And you can see the other ones on this sheet in terms of duty of care. It is things to strive for, so to speak. And the next one being loyalty. And again, you think, what does that loyalty thing mean? But you know, sometimes you don't always agree with what the city's doing, but you may be in the minority. Right? So whatever the council decides is what you have to be loyal to. Well, here's what the city's doing. It wasn't my personal choice, but I support the city. As well as thinking about conflict of interest and where you might have conflicts and really discerning what that means. And if you're appropriately representing people or if you are needing to make some changes there. Confidentiality is huge. You're always going to hear things as an elected official that is not ready for public consumption, and maybe you hear it in executive session, or maybe it's a business deal that may be happening. It'll get to the public meeting eventually, but when you hear it, it might still be confidential information. And so thinking through those kinds of loyalty issues is very important. And the last one being the duty of obedience. So certainly complying with regulatory, nobody likes there's another government pushing it down to you because you're down here at the local level. There's always somebody else with a rule or a law or something, but in reality, we have to obey some of those higher levels of government, for example, and be familiar with the documents and the, excuse is not, well, I didn't know that was a law. I didn't know we had that code on the books, whatever. So another way to look at your governance role is one of leadership, and certainly you are community leaders, you're leaders of the city in that you have that fiduciary, that strategic, and that generative roles, as we talked about earlier, thinking about what are the key questions and what are the adaptive issues that we really should be thinking about, not just well, are we going to buy a Ford or a Chevy this time? You know what I mean? Who's the low bid, whatever. You have a lot of easy decisions, but when it comes to leadership, there are decisions that are all about stewardship and all about thinking about that next generation. Let's drill down now in the next few slides to things that you as an individual should be thinking about and be prepared for. And you can see here a number of items that are obvious to you, I'm sure, being prepared for the meetings. It's surprising to know how many people are on a board or a city council that aren't real familiar with the mission and the values and the vision and those kind of things. But it's a busy role. You don't just show up twice a month, right? You're also being informed about issues. You're reading your packets, and you're maybe going to a league meeting, whatever. I love the last one on this slide because the intangibles matter. When you bring a sense of goodwill, and, I'm not always right, but I'm going to tell you what I think, and then I'll listen to what you think, for example. I'm going to have a little sense of humor in this because it'll be better for everybody. Even if we don't agree on things, we can laugh a bit. Individual commission members also need to ask, timely questions. Never speak for the city or for the commission unless you're authorized to. There is a role of a spokesperson, for example, and supporting your chief executive, your city manager. That, sometimes it's hard because some people think, well, the city manager's in charge of da-da-da, or, it's that, how do I, but in reality, there is support that is needed, and it goes back in both ways, so to speak. It really does. A few more, it is about being independent. Everybody can tell you what they think and ask you to think their way, but in the end, it is about your own ethical integrity. Sometimes you're offered a gift, and so we always have to look at that as to, especially if it's from someone who does business with the city. There are times when it might be all right, but not when they do business from the city, or they're expecting a vote, and it could be seen as a bribe, for example. The next few slides I'm going to go through real quick in the interest of time, and that is about financial oversight and issues. As earlier slides indicated, certainly your role of financial oversight as a fiduciary is very important. These several slides talk about that and give you tips and advice. What kind of questions do you ask? What do you look for? I remember in Derby, the once a year the auditor would come in. I assume that auditor probably comes in here and stands at the podium once a year. And, the council members always struggle, like, what am I supposed to ask this person? How do I know? And the best questions are usually that simple. What do I need to know? What'd you find? What did were the staff cooperative, whatever. So this slide gives you a little bit of examples about your financial issues. Always, always, always a program. The mission is one thing. Always got to know the X's and O's. How many staff, how much money, how much space, how many vehicles, what are the resources for how long? It can never be the one-time cost to build a building. It's always the operations of the building. And it is, we get caught in these kind of decisions sometimes when we don't realize, we forgot to ask how many staff that was going to be. Or we knew it and we did it anyway, but we didn't fund the property taxes to, pay for the staff, so to speak. So the audit obviously is one thing, but certainly the effectiveness of programs, internal controls, lots of different aspects of the financial piece. And there's, nobody wants to raise property taxes. We all know that. So it is difficult to run the government these days. I'm seeing difficulties everywhere I go. And sometimes some of the opportunity is different funding sources, donations and such, grants. And it's not federal grants anymore. It's private grants. And so sometimes you have to look at, well, what are these donations and what's the motivation here and where's the contract and what's the particulars? So financial oversight, some questions for you on this next slide, and that is, are we meeting those requirements? If we take this money, what does it mean for our future and how we're to operate? Cash flow projections, very important. Reserve requirements. Just saw a city recently get into real trouble with not having enough in reserve. And it's maybe you think, well, our budget balanced and we did the budget and we did the audit, and how was I supposed to know about the reserves? Reserves are always a good question. How much do we have? What are they used for? When have we dipped into them? All kinds of questions like that. I like that second to the last one there too. Our specific expense areas rising faster than the revenue to support that. So it's always eye-opening to see what are the things that are causing the budget to go up and what can we do about that. Oops. Oh, gosh. Okay. I hit too many buttons there. Okay. Communication of financial issues is the other thing. It's always frustrating to me when I see lots of numbers being handed. Okay, here's the budget, here's the audit, and it's just a bunch of numbers. And I always say, give me some words. Tell me what this means, because it's just the numbers are not enough. And it's important for you all to ask those questions and make sure, don't think you're the stupid one, right? If you don't understand it, I guarantee you half the city doesn't understand it. So go ahead and push with those questions about, and in communicating financial information, it's finding the key issues, not a lot of numbers, but the key numbers, a dashboard, so to speak, of what are the key things and can we explain it? Because if you give me numbers and you can't explain it in English, then there's a chance the staff didn't, or the person presenting it didn't even understand it well enough to explain it. So do not let, my main point here is don't let numbers dissuade you from thinking that it's okay to ask questions. Nobody understands all these numbers. It's very complex. And so we have to continue to find ways to make a few simple measures be impactful and meaningful. So I'm about halfway through with my stuff, and I know you'll have some questions for me, and I know I'm talking fast, but next part talks about effective meetings and just some tips. And so you obviously want to be transparent and give notice of your meetings, give your detailed agenda. Obviously, when I say post that agenda, that's online these days. That's very, very much common now, that if you can't find an agenda a few days in advance for a city council meeting, then, that's not real open. I think it's real important to pay attention to the deadlines of the local news media and make sure that you're able to get it out to where other folks can get ready for the meeting and not just you, right? You know that your quorum is 3, and certain votes require 3 to pass, and others require 2 if only 3 of you show up for the meeting, or 4 of you show up for the meeting, it's still 3. So there's always some details there about how we vote on things, but I'm sure you all are up to speed on that, as are your staff. The parliamentary aspect, well, we'll get into that in a minute. Some tips for engaging at the meetings, because as you know, you're up here on this dais, this is a formal meeting, so how do we engage, and how do we engage with each other, with staff, with the community? So just some thoughts that socializing is important, and arriving a few minutes early to say hello to colleagues, or to have a relationship other than sitting behind that desk and just voting on issues, right? It's important so that people can be seen as people and relate to each other in that way. Obviously, if you are going to run late, it's important that you let the staff know that, let the mayor know that, somebody, because quorum is required to get started, and we don't want to have to start late, if at all possible. But the other thing about engaging is just moving the meeting along. Don't feel like you're out of line if you're like, okay, I've heard enough, I'm ready to vote, here's a motion. It's always that silence. How come somebody doesn't make a motion, And it happens everywhere, but really that is an active part of being a member on the bench. It's like, let me make a motion, let me help with a second, let me not say my piece 3 times. Say it once, and everybody heard you. You don't have to say it again. That's difficult sometimes when we're passionate about an issue, but moving the meeting along really is important. Another thing you can do when you read that packet in advance is you can ask the staff, like in an email or something, or a phone call, okay, here's my questions, here's my questions I want answered before the meeting, or here's what I'm going to ask in the meeting, and I want you to be prepared. It's not like it's staged. It's that sometimes there are questions you have for staff, and they don't have every file, every document in front of them. And I know myself, I can't remember everything. Hopefully I remember enough for the actual items on the agenda, but when people start asking about other things, I'm looking around going, if I had my computer right here, I could probably find that real fast, but I don't. So anytime you can give staff a heads up, I think it just helps them be more prepared at the podium and not have to tell you, I'll look that up and get back to you. We can get that information out in the public setting. better. There we go. And here we go. So more tips for engaging at meetings is to remember that all ideas do have value. So, let people have their say, but remember, as you're listening, make sure you're really listening. Anytime you're having those side conversations, which honestly, you all have a small group here, so you probably don't have very many of, but I've seen some elected bodies, Jim's talking again, the eye roll kind of a deal. He's doing that again. And so you're having the side conversations, and it really does make it difficult for folks to hear, and it is disrespectful. So as colleagues, sometimes you don't think of yourself as a colleague with each other. You show up here, you do your thing, you go back home. But as a colleague, if you can find a way to have a feedback loop with each other and ask for it, Rich says to Kathy, hey, is there anything I could have done better tonight? Do you have any advice for me? You know what I mean? I want to be better. And if you're asking your colleague for it, then it's more likely they might ask you for your opinion or your assistance as well. And we really can get better that way. That's a big bridge to get over because we think, oh, we're elected, we're supposed to know this stuff. No. It's always good to ask each other for help. And many times we don't want to offer it, unsolicited advice. So asking for that kind of help really is a good thing. And it's also respectful. It lets people know that, lets me know that someone values my opinion if they're going to ask me for help. So parliamentary, we're not going to get into a lot of detail parliamentary, but let me say that you all are blessed. In Newton, you have a code of meeting procedure, you have a governing body manual, in addition to the actual city code. These documents are intended to be the, easier to understand, easier to absorb. They're on your website, so people who are thinking about running for office, people who are trying to figure out what city government's all about can read these and see, oh, the role of the mayor is this. And they're called a commission here and not a council here. And where I lived before, the mayor was elected at large, or, because every city government is different in the way it's set up. But I'm pleased and proud that you have those documents because a lot of your parliamentary procedures embedded in your little code of meeting procedure. And I think you adopted these in 2023. And so it's good that you have those and that they're out there. And these cover a lot of information. It's not Robert's Rules of Order. Oh, I forgot my prop. My prop is Robert's Rules of Order, my little book I have at home. It's this big. And people think, well, we're going to use Robert's Rules. Really? Because I bet none of you have ever read that book. I mean, who has, right? So it's important to have this little 5-page document with, here's how we make motions, here's how we do things at Newton City Commission. Obviously, parliamentary is there for a reason. The procedure is there to protect the rights of everyone, to give everyone equal voice, and to make sure we don't spend too much time on things that don't matter, that we can move along. One of the areas I always like to cover when I talk about these orientation issues is citizens forum. As you all know, and it's not always obvious to the public, but there's several ways to talk to the governing body. And you have official, legal, public hearings on like zoning cases and various things that are prescribed by law. And that is kind of a different deal. But you have a citizens forum. You don't have to have one at every meeting. Many governing bodies do. But they're done in so many different ways too. But good examples I see several of here tonight that when you welcome the speakers when they come in, or welcome everyone when they come in, because maybe some folks are here and they didn't really intend to speak, but the sign-in rules are at the door, and you've got this big sign here saying, here's how you sign in. Some cities require folks to sign up days in advance. That used to be a good, best practice. I don't know that that's a best practice anymore, but there are limitations in any community I go to because you have to have limitations. This is truly your meeting. I say this every time I do an orientation, and it always gets a look because some people think of this meeting, city commission meeting, as the people's meeting. No, it's really not the people's meeting. They elected you for a reason. They elected you to show up twice a month and have this meeting. So the meeting is for you to do business. This is the formal official power that you have. That's the other thing. Some people think an elected official has individual power. Not really. Your power is acting as a majority in a open public meeting. That's where your power is. It's where your authority is. So this meeting is what you were elected to do, bottom line, right? So as far as Citizens Forum, it's important to have rules of the game. One, I was very pleased to see in your Chapter 9 of your governing body manual is that one of your rules of the game is that you ask people to come speak to you on any subject relevant to the city government, its policies, operations, or services. That's an important restriction these days. We've seen some communities where folks come in and talk about all kinds of interesting things that are important to them, but maybe they're national politics or international issues or county issues that this city commission really can't do anything about, all those things. So that's a good policy because you do want to make sure that if you're listening to folks here, that it's something you can do something about, or you can tell them you really need to go over to your state legislator or your county commissioner or what have you. Another one that is a good best practice is to have a time limit for your speakers. Now, I've seen some cities go to 3 minutes, and when I first saw that, I thought, ooh, that's tight. It's very common to have 5-minute speaker limits. So like I say, some have gone to 3, but most of the time there's a 5-minute limit. A best practice there is that when you're listening to someone talk and the dinger, the bell goes off, or the timekeeper that you've designated holds up the red card, or first the yellow card, hopefully, then the red card. Hopefully there's a clock that the speaker can see, which I don't see here. I know there's one behind me, but I've seen where people put a clock on the podium here so I can see it, or just they would say, okay, welcome your speaker, and if you look at this person, I'm going to pick on Rebecca because she's in eyesight here, but she's going to hold up a yellow card when you have 30 seconds left or a minute left, and she's going to hold up a red card when you're done, and she should be over there sort of waving it, I was at a place a couple of weeks ago, and they said, oh, we have a buzzer, and the clerk does not turn off the buzzer, so it's not like ding. That buzzer's like a kitchen, clock. Yeah. And it's bzzz, and she just lets it go until the person stops speaking. And I said, well, there you go. Because, not everybody can hear that. So I think it is important to think about the hearing of a buzz and the seeing of someone telling you it's time to stop. Another best practice on this is there are times when a person has more to say. Now, most people can get their piece said in 5 minutes. 5 minutes is a long time. And often, if people have more time, they're just repeating. Right? And so that's what's valuable about a 5-minute limit, because if they really do have more to say and you all are like, yeah, we want to hear the rest of this, they're not done yet. The best practice is mayor would say, council, do you want it? Now speaker, how much more time do you think you need? I only have 1 page left. I've covered 3, maybe 3 more minutes, and, something to give you an idea of, I'm almost done. And say, anyone want to make a motion? Yep, I move to give them 3 more minutes. Second, approved. It takes a few seconds to do it, but it helps the speaker, honestly, readjust and kind of go, okay, I've been talking a long time. I need to get done. They're doing me a favor of giving me a little bit more time. And as long as that's in your rules, and you do that for everybody, right? So that's the tricky part. So if if I'm going to stand up here and tell you how awful y'all are and how I wish y'all were not elected and how I'm going to do something different and, just berating you or something, you're going to want to say, well, isn't that 5 minutes? Isn't that time to go, right? But if I'm standing here praising you and saying Newton's a great place to live and y'all are doing wonderful things, you might not be as inclined to go with that. So I will say definitely a best practice is that you enforce the time limit to everyone. And I understand, sometimes we have a time limit in our documents, but we haven't been, maybe using that or thinking about it, or we haven't been keeping time. We don't have a designated timekeeper. So, it's probably worked well for you, but the main thing is the consistency. And one of your documents says you have a 5-minute limit, and the other document doesn't say anything about a limit. And so that might be, there's a few things from your 2023 document that when I sat down with the mayor and the staff, we found a few things that maybe to update a little bit. So like I say, the most important thing is consistency, and some communities have found that the idea of asking the council to vote on extension works well because it doesn't put the mayor in the hot seat for everything. Where a person's going, that mayor doesn't like me. He cut me off at 5 minutes, but he let that other guy finish his paragraph or something, right? Well, it gets everybody in on it. And sometimes you just have to say, well, you know, you've said the same thing 3 times. I don't think we need to give more time, you know, that kind of thing. So it's also important to say that it is not a dialogue. This is hard for y'all. I do not envy you at all. It's really hard to not get sucked into a debate when someone comes up. They don't have things to tell you, they have things to ask you. Well, what about this? Well, I want an answer. And I might just stand here and wait for your answer. You know what I mean? It gets a little dicey because you feel like, well, maybe I should answer him. No, this is the public forum to speak to you. It's not that you should feel pressure to make up answers to their questions or say, staff, where are we on this? You know, let's all go off the cuff because one guy wants to know the answers to questions. I think the main thing here is that there are multiple channels for people to get information from the city. You push information out all the time in your newspaper, on your website, in your social media. Anybody can still call City Hall and get answers to questions during office hours. They don't have to do a high pressure tactic of standing here saying, you need to answer my question right now. How come you spent $40 on this or whatever? Whatever their issue is. A few more best practices. I might have covered some of these. Yep, I did. Do not invite. Yeah, so some communities have a citizens forum, and then they have official public hearings when you have to. But then they also, every agenda item, does anybody want to speak? Well, you know, you'd hope that's, you know, managed in a prudent manner, but I know several local governments whose meetings go well into the night because you have the same 5 people, that's generous, sometimes it's the same 2 or 3 people, showing up every meeting, talking on every agenda item, and sometimes when they speak, I mean, these are real life examples, I obviously won't tell you which cities they are, but they are not even talking about the agenda item. Okay, but you give them a chance to speak at every agenda item, and they do. And so it's lengthened meetings, and so sometimes you have to take other actions. I was surprised, honestly, to see that your citizens forum is at the end of the meeting. I don't know if it's always at the end or if that was a change you made on purpose. I know a couple of local governments, not even necessarily cities, but a Board of Ed and another community, they moved theirs to the end because of they hadn't limited the number of speakers or the amount of time for public forum. So it was lengthening the meetings so much, they said, well, let's get our business done, and then we'll do the citizens forum at the end. Many do citizen forum first, and part of the reason for that is they don't ask for people to speak on every agenda item. So if people look at agenda and they say, well, I have an issue with this, I want to tell the council. Well, they can tell them, like right now, when I'm speaking first, before you start taking votes on things. And that way, if they have something on any issue on that agenda, they can say it early in this forum, and then everybody has a chance to process it before that item comes up. Maybe the staff have a chance to process it. You might say, well, you know, that speaker, you know, city manager, that speaker asked this question earlier in the forum, and I kind of want to know the answer. Do you guys know the answer before we vote? So I have found that to be a useful part of making your meeting more productive. I've also seen it where cities say in their, like, relevant to city government, what you can talk about, they say, except on items that are on the agenda tonight. And I always thought that was really weird, but it must be because they allow people to speak on every agenda item, so they want them focused on those items. I think it's better to do it all in citizens forum at the beginning of the meeting, because then everybody has a chance to process that versus, okay, you just heard 2 members of the public speak, now it's time to vote. You haven't really processed it very well. So just some thoughts on that. It's always important to make sure that people know. They can send you an email, they can call you, they can send a letter. There are other channels and ways to reach you offline outside of the meeting. That's really important, because what a lot of people don't like to stand up here and talk at this podium. It is nerve-wracking. It is, they're not public speakers. They're not dressed up. They came right from work. They feel a little intimidated by y'all. So that's very common. So anything you can do to make people feel more comfortable in that, for example, we started having designated staff or whoever was in the room greet people as they come in, especially when you see someone who doesn't normally come and you're thinking, hey, are you, now you had to come up here a ways to find your room, but in Derby, we would always have people, as we met on the same night as the rec commission or the school board, and so, you're in the wrong building, you need to go over here. And if nobody talked to them, they might sit there for an hour before they figured out, ooh, they were in the wrong place. So when you can talk to them up front, you can find out, oh, I have a thing, and here's my issue, and I got to fix this. Well, have you called City Hall? No. Well, okay, this is something that the inspector could do in this long, but this body can't help you. Well, they just think that that's what they're supposed to do, is go talk to their elected officials. So I always find that when you talk to people up front, you can help bring the nervous level down and make sure they know if you want to speak, please go ahead. If you don't necessarily want to speak, let me get your number and I'll have the inspector call you tomorrow, that kind of thing. So what did I do?
That mouse is down on that.
Thank you. I'll use the little wheel and it'll get there. So we've talked about some of these effective meetings and, collaborative government. So just a little bit of a lesson on that. I have a little video, if we can make it play here. Rebecca's going to help me, I bet. Is that going to play? This is all about just whose role is what, and give you a break from
Which form of government works best? For residents, elected officials, appointed officials, businesses, nonprofits, government employees, neighborhood groups, and you. What everyone wants is a community that works. Effective, efficient, ethical, and resilient.
Sorry about that. I should have known Rebecca had a plan. This is real short.
Which form of government works best? For residents, elected officials, appointed officials, businesses, nonprofits, government employees, neighborhood groups, and you. What everyone wants is a community that works. Effective, efficient, ethical, and resilient. We asked people from all over the country to tell us about the council manager form of government and why it works.
The voters elect a governing body, and that governing body is comprised of a mayor and council members, and they're responsible for selecting a professional and experienced city manager that runs the day-to-day operations of the city. In essence, they make sure that residents get the services that they need. They're also responsible for preparing an annual budget and managing that budget, and they implement the goals and priorities of the council.
It's best to have professional management handling the day-to-day operations. One caveat about it being an elected official is the criteria is very slim. You need to be a certain age, you need to live in the community for at least a year, be a registered voter, and that's primarily about it.
There's a group of leadership in our community that met on a regular basis. And what they asked me was one question: what do we need to do with city government to move ahead economically and strategically? And my immediate answer was, we need to change the form of government.
What residents can expect is to be able to elect officials that will certainly keep the residents' priorities in focus. Residents can hold their elected officials responsible for setting policy direction, and they can also expect the professional manager to ensure those policies are carried out with integrity and transparency.
If you have somebody in the office who can answer the phone and answer questions, it's going to be much easier for local businesses and for local lawyers to figure out what has to be done to get the result they desire. Your constituents are happier.
You have a certified professional in the city manager take charge of the administration, and you have a council of community leaders and people who are invested in their districts and know what goes on, making the decisions. And it's a perfect balance.
You can have conversations that are more long-term and more strategic with individuals in the council manager form of government. They feel a little bit more insulated from the political environment and can concentrate more on looking at the costs and the benefits and whether a program that you're talking about is going to be effective and efficient for the organization.
Local government managers can be the best friend of nonprofit organizations as we share the same mission, to make people's lives better.
The presence of a professional manager at the city or county level really adds to the efforts in place on civic engagement in that community.
For staff, they are guided by a manager who understands the long horizon. The budget process is a huge undertaking. We're not just balancing the books for 1 year. We're asking, how do our choices today impact our ability to deliver services 10 years from now?
It gives me confidence that when I'm working with that individual that we can take something to the city council and mayor for approval, that it's based on simple merit and experience and knowledge and nothing else. No politics are involved in those decisions.
We had a couple of people working in emergency management, and they were in their own little bubble. What we have now is that there's a new employee orientation that looks citywide, not just at particular departments, and it also includes emergency management so that people have an idea of what their responsibilities would be should we have an emergency.
We had a tornado strike town, and we were in active emergency operations for about 72 hours here in the city. All of the defined roles within the plan enable us to handle and mitigate that. I do have neighboring communities where it's a mayor, strong mayor type of government. The police and fire chiefs typically change hands when a new mayor is in office, and that doesn't bode well for the community, not having continuity and right person in the job based on performance and experience, not who is supporting who in an election. And we're very fortunate here. I've never had to deal with that in my 20 years as chief here.
The research that I've done on municipal corruption with my colleague Whitney Afonso points conclusively to the council manager form as being highly protective against corruption events. If you think about the mayor-council form, many proponents of that form argue that there is greater accountability due to the election of the chief executive. However, due to separation of powers between the elected and the legislative, there's separation that also means less transparency because the mayor doesn't have to report directly to council on a day-to-day basis like the manager does.
You also have the flexibility of terminating a underperforming village manager or village administrator. You do not have the flexibility to fire an elected official.
From a resident standpoint, you want to make sure that the neighbors in your community really understand that the form of government is there to protect them. Today we talk a lot about accountability and transparency, and in a council manager form of government you have both of those.
Thank you for sitting through that. And my last few slides are kind of repetitive. I'm not going to go over them. I know we're getting short on time, and I want to make sure we have any time for your questions, if you have any. I would be happy to try to answer those. My last slide, I love the last slide though, is what's a takeaway? If there's anything that you felt like you heard tonight that was like new, different, a concern, a surprise, any takeaway that might be useful for the colleagues, for myself, anything.
For me, I feel like this would have been good information at the beginning of my time as a commissioner to have. So I appreciate you putting this together and educating me about that, because this was helpful, I felt.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
I think we are always trying to do better, and we were discussing about doing this every time we have a new cycle come as an orientation onboarding. We do it for staff when they join the city and everything. We should do it here as well. The one that I thought was kind of interesting was the thought of moving public forum to the beginning of the meetings. You know, that one was interesting to me.
Does anybody know here, has it been at the end for a long time, or does anybody have any memory of why it was put at the end? Or
Been at the
Yes.
as long as I've been here.
Really?
12, 13 years, yeah.
We have moved it around from the beginning to the end, back to the beginning, back to the end, where it stayed now. And part of the reason was, one of the things that you have said is that we could get the business done. And sometimes what happens in citizens forum is also starts a meeting with that negativity or whatever. And so I think that was part of the reason that got moved. And I've been here for a long time, so.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, that makes sense. The benefit of having it at the end is that people who came to the meeting get to see what you're dealing with. They're sitting there watching the rest of the business. Whereas sometimes if they came to say their piece, they might leave after they say their piece, and then they never really watch the meeting. So there really are pros and cons to both ways. I actually know one city that does it at the beginning, or they have 2 meetings a month, and they do it at the beginning on one, at the end on the other.
Interesting.
Anything else?
I just have one question. I'm just going to get it out there. So who decides what is best practice?
Good question.
Because we have a little issue here right now about best practice on how we report some of our decisions.
Oh, okay.
And a recent decision that the commission made 2 weeks ago, it was not 5-0, but I know it gets reported as the commission decided this. And there are some decisions that have a lot of passion with them. And I would have to say I don't agree with best practice to report it as the commission, because you are the connector, I guess, if that's the word I want to use, between your constituents and the city and staff. And when those things happen, I'm always going to be thinking of the constituents, the city, the residents. And when it's not reported, well, I'm going to say accurately.
Yeah.
Then your residents read that and they think, and then the negative stuff. And I
Someone
think
might say something to you, well, how come you guys did this? And you say,
well, and I have had a number of people, people that said, I can't, did you do that? I can't think you would do that. And I have said very clearly, no, I did not.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we all have a good working relationship. I don't think there's any complaint on that. And I think I have read articles where it's healthy to have some disagreement. So if you know it's healthy to have some disagreement, then why all of a sudden is it not healthy to report it the way it went down?
Yeah.
And use the reasoning as best practice or common. Just because it's that doesn't mean that we can't deviate from that.
Sure, sure.
So is that a commission decision, or is that, and I guess going ahead and doing what I believe is the right thing to do in spite of that, not sending a message to my co-commissioners that I'm seeking to be a rebel, but yeah, so that starts with that question, where do best practices come from?
Yeah. Well, It's a great question, and certainly my experience, and like I talk about, not just in the city and the county that I work for, but also in looking around and visiting other communities, to talking to a lot of commissions. Every city's different on a lot of things, and so just using that Citizens Forum examples a while ago, you know, there are pros and cons no matter how you do it, and every community's different in their culture as well, not only their form of government, but their culture. So things can be different in different ways. What I try to do is, when I say something's a best practice, I try to describe, well, I've seen it this way, and here's this way, and here's why most people do it this way, and kind of that type of thing. But I think it is very difficult when there's divisive issues, and there's all kinds of divisive issues, and it's very important to know that you know, we're not trying to make everything, you know, homogenous. It's okay to have different views. It's okay to have split votes. Most communities have split votes on a lot of things. I get the feeling maybe your question is stemming from a community that maybe isn't used to split votes. So when there's a split vote, it's kind of a big deal. And so you want to.
Well, they read.
Okay.
They read it as the commission.
Yeah.
But because that's the way it's usually reported. I shouldn't speak on behalf of the two newspapers here, but
yeah. Well, it's the tricky thing about democracy, right, and government is majority rules. And so when I talked about parliamentary procedure, you want everybody to have their say and everybody to have a vote, but in the end, majority rules. And so if a majority voted for it, what would that be, 4-1, then the commission did do it, because majority rules. Doesn't mean there can't be a minority vote or a negative vote, or, you know, someone who wasn't there that day, and same deal, well, I didn't vote for it, I wasn't there that day. Well, yeah, but the majority of the commission, so it kind of goes back to when we talked earlier about your power. Your power, your authority is your vote in a public meeting. But as a community leader, you also have, you know, sort of the bully pulpit. You have your own, like when you say, when a constituent approaches you and says, what were you thinking, Kathy? You could say, well, I didn't do that, but the majority rules. And I'm not going to be someone who's going to go against the majority, you know. If I could get somebody to change their mind, that'd be different, but I couldn't.
Well, I think, too, sometimes people are afraid to say something because they're afraid they might hurt your feelings. I've had that happen before. I think it's not my intention to be disrespectful. I respect the processes, but I wholeheartedly believe that there are times when you must. And I guess I would ask this question. I've thought about this with regard to a recent decision that we made, and reporting, going on to the city's Facebook page, because it will get reported as the commission.
Yeah.
I have thought too, and have had a suggestion from some who said, well, go to your own Facebook page and report that if people are reading your Facebook page, instead of going to the cities. And I'm willing to do that too. I'm going to report, once it's reported, this ordinance will pass tonight, if it's the same. And that's why I was asking, best practices, who determines that?
Yeah.
I think there are times when you know people well enough to know, and I've sat here for 10 years, and that's not to say that I have it all down, and I'm not saying that.
Of course.
But I know there is the people that you represent, the people that really put you there because they appreciate you, they're going to ask, and they have asked.
Sure.
And I feel like it's important to get ahead of that and say, this is what I did. This is what I did.
And let me just offer a couple of thoughts. One, in the Supreme Court, they say the majority says this, but here's the minority opinion, right? And all of those are detailed out. It's not just a yes and no. Really, the yes-no is just like the tip of the iceberg. It's their logic and their reasoning behind. And I know in many local governments, elected officials will say, okay, here's what I think, and I'm going to vote no, and here's why. So you get it in the record, in the minutes. So anybody wanting to know, well, was this a split vote, and why was that? You know, sometimes people will vote no, and you got a split vote. Well, you're not used to having split votes, and so people will, well, how come he voted no? Because he doesn't explain it. It's almost like a mystery. So I agree. The main thing, if you're in the minority, you certainly have a right to explain why you voted no or why you don't agree with the majority as a personal effort.
And being respectful about it. I certainly
Sure.
don't
Oh, yes.
intend to go on a rampage.
Yes.
I mean, why is it that we can see the exact votes of our state legislators and our federal, but all of a sudden, the local says best practice is? I don't get
Well, you're
that.
putting votes in your minutes, aren't you? I
But
mean, I'm
who
assuming.
in the public, and I have asked this question, who in the public is going to call City Hall and ask for a copy of the minutes?
Oh, I mean, they're on the website, right? So, I mean,
But
most.
I don't know the people, honestly. Anybody I have talked to, I cannot tell you one person that has said to me, oh, I went to the website.
Yeah.
They catch that on Facebook. Facebook is really the tool.
Yeah.
And
It's true. I hear your frustration, and I got you. I think the duty, though, is to remember majority rules, and the duty is to say, okay, I disagreed, and here's why. Always be able to explain why, but also say the majority rules. That's what government is in America.
Yes.
We abide by the decision of the majority, and if you don't like it, elect somebody new next time and bring the issue up again, right?
yeah.
So.
Well, and I certainly don't mind saying those things and being respectful of the process and that, but I really wanted to know about this
Yeah,
best
absolutely.
practice thing.
You bet.
So
Thank you for asking.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all very much. Any other questions, thoughts?
I appreciate what you mentioned about the feedback loop, because as a newly elected person, it feels like constituents think that now I know everything, and I don't know much at all. And it's really nice to be able to know that people can, like, I want everybody to say, yeah, that probably didn't work. Or,
Yeah.
you
Commissioner
just-
Miller, I am so glad you said that, because I have to tell you that I do know of a real true story of a person who became mayor in a small town in Kansas, and he thought his job was to respond to every pothole question, every this, every that. So, and his mode was Facebook. So instead of calling him, you didn't have to call him, you do the Facebook thing. And so everybody who posted anything, he was responding to, answering, saying, hey, George, how come you didn't fix this? This guy over here wants. He literally wore himself out. And I mean, and he was great heart, really thought that his job was to represent constituents and be their go-between. But what I have repeatedly counseled elected officials to do is say, remember how many times did I say tonight, your job is to come to this meeting twice a month, read those packets, and vote, because you're policymakers. If your constituent wants this fixed, or this, why come, and how come of this, and why, well, then read and listen and call City Hall and ask the staff and ask Commissioner Valentine, for example, why'd you vote on this that way? Or how come you guys are spending money on this? I mean, ask your elected officials policy level questions, not how come my snow on my street is still there? Well, did you call and let somebody know that they missed a street? Or, you know what I mean? I'm just using a made up example here, but.
Too soon.
Too soon, yeah. The streets I came in on were awesome. Thank you very much for plowing those streets. But thank you very much for saying that. I appreciate it. You all have a good rest of your night. Thank you very much for having me here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All righty. Next item this evening is to consider the minutes of the January 13th, 2026 meeting.
I so move we approve.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Next item this evening is to receive an update on the Rockets and Rails Newton's Independence Day celebration. Aaron.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Before we get to our conversation tonight about consumer fireworks, we wanted to give you an update on our planned community fireworks celebration for this summer. You will recall that in last summer's budget sessions, the City Commission approved $25,000 in CVB funds to be used for a community fireworks show. This is in celebration of the 250th anniversary of the United States. The event committee has planned a downtown family festival in Military Park, and it will include a concert sponsored by Sand Creek Summer Days by the Stolen Winnebagos, as well as food trucks, bounce houses, yard games, and lots of other activities for families. And then we will have a fireworks show that's going to be shot primarily from the roof of New Jerusalem. And we have contracted with Victory Pyrotechnics to do that show. They are the ones who do the downtown Wichita Riverfest show, so they're very familiar with doing downtown shows like that. And that event will be on July 3rd. A lot of the details are still in the planning stages, so watch for more announcements as we get a little closer to that date. And I would stand for any questions.
Sounds like a really fun evening for the city of Newton.
And free.
Yes.
I'm assuming that New Jerusalem was part of that decision?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have their wholehearted approval.
Okay.
And we have been up on the rooftop, and it's going to work out well.
Okay. That's good.
Good. Thank you, Erin. Next item this evening is to consider an ordinance establishing the dates and times for sale and discharge fireworks for 2026.
Okay, Commissioners, at the last meeting, you directed staff to come back with an ordinance with the dates that you had made a motion and approved for one. And that was for sale from June 27th through July 1st from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then July 2nd through July 4th from 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And then discharge was going to be June 27th through July 1st, and those would be non-aerial from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And then July 2nd through the 4th would be aerial and non-aerial fireworks from 10 a.m. to midnight. Just a little background that we gave you. We checked on what the permit fees were for some of the other cities in the surrounding area, and we seem to be in the general middle of all that. We have 9 fireworks stands, and they bring in $22,500 per year, which goes into the general fund. The sales tax revenue, the Harvey County sales tax report for 2025 showed that for the fireworks merchant sale wholesalers and then the fireworks shops permanent locations totaled about $11,927. $972, sorry. And half of that went into the city, was going to the city of Newton. And then also in your packet, there is a placer report that gives you a little bit more information about where people were buying fireworks during what time, and then where they kind of went afterwards out and that kind of stuff. So you can take a look at that. Last year, we also asked the residents about their preferences, a very unscientific poll that we did for when they wanted fireworks, how many days that they wanted. 64% wanted the 4 days, and 34% wanted the 8 days. We did reach out to the fireworks vendors just to get their feelings from that also. We have usually, like I said, 9 vendors. We reached out to 6 of them because understand that one of them has 3 different stands in town. So we received responses from 4 of them, and those responses are also in that packet. I will let you discuss.
So then that means 6 is the total of the owners of these stands, because one of them has 3.
Correct. 6 owners, and then they have that would be wholesale fireworks that has 3 stands, and then they would actually they contract out with whomever they do, with a nonprofit or whatever. But they are the vendor.
I would love to start if I could.
Sure.
2 weeks ago, the proposal we voted on seemed to me like a reasonable solution based on the information that we had in front of us. Over the last couple of weeks, I've gathered more facts that have led me to change my mind. So we talked about the money a little bit. If we're wanting to talk about fireworks bringing in money, then we could look at potentially raising the permit fees, because that's where the money comes from. Otherwise, we're looking at $6,000 in sales tax for last year when there were 9 days of sales, which doesn't seem like a reason to have 9 days of sales for $6,000. If we're talking about business interests and sales traffic, then I would like to look at real numbers. And so I like the, well, first of all, 2 local vendors who I talked to who've sold in Newton for many years and who directly support local organizations told me that they closely track their sales every year and they said that they sold the same amount whether they were allowed to sell for 8 days or 4 days. Selling for 8 days just increased their labor costs and other expenses, and so decreased the help that they could provide in the community. Even more convincing to me is this new phone-based historical data from Placer AI, where the city can kind of see where people are shopping, the volume of people on specific days. So we can see that last year's customer traffic at 3 of our fireworks stands were low for the first 5 days and then spiked for the last 3 to 4 days. And the pattern is consistent among all 3. So even though there were 9 days of selling, the majority of people appear to have been shopping for fireworks in Newton from July 1 to 3. I've also talked to people and learned that my understanding is that the Newton fire and police staff and fire marshal would all probably prefer 3 or 4 days of selling and shooting, and some hours to match our existing noise ordinances to keep things predictable. Just like everyone else I've heard from, they would like to see a permanent plan so that businesses, citizens, law enforcement, and first responders can all have predictability. And if I'm wrong about that, correct me.
Yep.
You can come up and correct me. We've all received emails and messages from Newton residents and on Facebook and all over. Speaking for myself, 100% of what I've seen were people asking for fewer days, which is just non-scientific, but that's all I've heard. And then I was also reminded, one last detail, that we have an existing special permit process for fireworks if someone would like to have a fireworks event outside of the official dates. And I can't remember if I was part of it, maybe right before me, you approved a permit for St. Mary's to shoot off fireworks. So if somebody wants to shoot off fireworks the weekend before, it's an easy thing. We could approve a permit, they could buy it somewhere else.
That is, I would just want to clarify that is for a public display, is what that is in there for.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Just as a clarification.
Thanks. Yeah. So, to wrap up, 2 weeks ago, Kathy made a motion for 4 days of selling and shooting, but there was no second. After weighing all the information I've just mentioned, I would like to make a motion for an ordinance setting 4 days of selling and shooting from July 1 to 4, with selling from 10 to 10 each day, shooting from 10 to 10 on the first 2 days, and 10 to midnight on the second 2 days. And I would like this ordinance to be made permanent. If you would like to add a clause to include July 5 when it makes sense with the calendar, that's fine. And I don't have an opinion on the permit fees. If you want to keep it the same, I'd like to aim for predictability, and we can always tweak it in the future if we need to, if we realize it doesn't work. But as my first year on this, I really don't enjoy the fireworks discussion. If there's a second to my motion, then I'd be happy to answer questions or have discussion about this. But I thought maybe we can focus on, here's one option, discuss it.
I agree. I mean, that's the way I interpreted the information, the data that was brought to us today through Pacer, was the same way Jason described there. So it kind of seemed like to me that the sales tax theory was really not that significant of a change. So I also have received a lot of emails and Facebook messages and things like that, requesting, hey, 9 days, 8 days, too much, just too much for discharge regardless whether it's the artillery fireworks or the, smaller ones. And then you did have some that were like, well, we might be okay with the smaller ones, and being discharged, and then, the bigger ones later. So, it also, with this new data that came in and hearing from other people, most people are feeling like the 9 days, 8 days would be too much. I personally agree with that. But I did think that, if it was bringing more sales tax revenue into our community, then maybe we need to consider that as part of our decision. But when the data shows me that it's really not that significant of a increase, so then that kind of made me want to throw that out and be like, okay, well, that's not necessarily significant enough maybe for myself to consider that. So I personally would like to recommend maybe a 5-day sale and discharge and call it good. That would be my.
Jason, I think you made a formal
motion.
Can you repeat your days?
Yeah, my intent is to make a formal motion and then vote that up or down. So July 1 to 4.
For sales and discharge?
Sales and discharge.
Okay.
Selling 10 to 10 each day.
Okay.
Shooting 10 to 10 on the first 2 days, July 1 and 2. Shooting 10 to midnight the second 2 days, July 3 to 4.
I'm going to second that motion. I believe that's the best that we're going to have. We had 4 days last year, and so it worked pretty well, and I think people were willing, accepted it. So I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Well, I would say that I am normally a data-driven person. We got this information, this last packet of information with the Placer AI information, everything late this afternoon, but it was really telling. I would invite you guys to pull those packets down and take a look at that Placer data. It's really good business info. So with that, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign? Aye. Are you an aye or?
I'm an aye.
All right. Very good. Motion carries.
Okay, so
like we did from the previous meeting, we will come back with an ordinance consistent with that motion.
To make it permanent, because I think his motion was for that,
Yeah.
and to make it a permanent.
I know we've said permanent. Obviously, we can't tie the hands of a future commission. It can always be repealed or amended.
Right.
But to be essentially a default where it carries over absent a change, we can absolutely do that.
Whatever the word is for that. What is the word for that?
Permanent. We'll call it what you want. We'll draft it like
perpetual.
That. Perpetual, sure.
this will,
We'll bring it
yeah,
back.
we'll bring this back at the next meeting with the actual ordinance, so you can read the ordinance, and then with the ordinance and give you an ordinance number. Okay?
All right.
Is everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right. Next item this evening is to consider a cereal malt beverage license for Kerper Newton LLC for off-premise. Denise?
Yes, this is a license for the property at Manchester, which was formerly the Newell Travel Plaza, and they are getting their CMB. They were from out of state. They had some questions and didn't quite get everything done in time, and because of the stuff having to go to the state, it didn't get back to us from the state and them in time to get it all earlier. So I would recommend approval of this. They meet all the qualifications.
I move to approve the license for Kimpo.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Next item this evening is year-end report for Harvey County Economic Development Council. Beth,
Good evening.
will you pull that up? There you go.
Hi, I'm Beth Shelton, Executive Director of Harvey County Economic Development. And most of you attended our annual meeting. The way that our year works, our annual meeting is usually in the third quarter, so I'm going to give you just a few numbers of our actual full 2025. I'm going to try to make this brief because you do have a long agenda tonight. But Harvey County Economic Development is dedicated to the growth and advancement of industry in Harvey County. One of our main focuses is business growth, which that's recruitment, retention, and expansion. In 2025, the EDC responded to 39 requests for proposals. So back when I was first an economic development director about 10 years ago here, that number was 14. So we're getting a lot more looks at people considering Harvey County as an option for their business. If we break down those RFPs, 24 of them were for product manufacturing of some sort. Those could be miscellaneous with manufacturing. Aviation had six for warehouse, distribution, and transportation, and then 3 of them were professional, office, or tech driven. We also had one new company that was recruited into Harvey County, or into Newton specifically, Olympus Filters, which we worked on that project. We had 3 Harvey County manufacturers expand, Avcon here locally, Midwest Transformers, and then Stinger over in Burton. Those represented about $8.6 million in capital investment and 75 new full-time jobs that pay at or above the average wage for Harvey County, which is $21 an hour. One of the other focuses is retention visits. Jennifer went out and visited with 71 local companies, and the type of assistance that she gives those companies is sharing with them information on tax abatements, incentives, applications, event assistance, groundbreakings, starting productions, workforce and talent pipeline resources, and then strategic connections within Harvey County. Another big area for us is marketing. We believe in marketing regionally, but selling ourselves locally. So to that, we participated in events with the state and with the Greater Wichita Partnership, and those events are listed in our annual report. Some other fun things, we worked on coordinating and sponsoring, again, the Brooks Trade Center Signing Day. That's a really fun event that we have out at the Newton High School for kids that are going through a career pathway. We assisted the city of Burton to conduct an LMI survey because their LMI was too low and they needed to get a higher one so that they could then apply for CDBG grants. We also helped with the Network Kansas Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge judging, which is a really fun event too for you guys to come out and see. We also work with the local, region, and state on strategic priorities. I serve on the Kansas Economic Development Alliance Board and their legislative committee. I'm on the Greater Wichita Partnership Steering Committee, and then serve on the board for Halstead, and then are active partners of the Heston and Newton Chamber of Commerce. So yeah, looking forward, we are taking the Garner report that we received and putting a strong focus on marketing, taking out some of those recommendations that we really want to make action plans from. Also exploring continued industrial growth opportunities, and then trying to strengthen all of our partnerships with our funding partners specifically, but all of our partners in general. So just want to say thank you to the commission and to the staff here. You guys are always supportive and always communicate great with us. I think we all have the same goal of just making Newton and Harvey County a great place to work, and sometimes the progress seems slow, but I think we're getting it done together. So.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Any questions or comments for Beth?
I think that's the fastest I've ever heard you really speak.
Okay.
And it was all clear and you could understand it.
Good job.
Yeah, you. All right. Next item this evening is to consider a contract with KDOT related to the high-risk urban roads program. Ed?
Thank you, Commission. This program is administered through the State of Kansas Secretary of Transportation. It provides opportunity for local authorities to receive assistance and funding to help reduce traffic fatalities and serious injuries through using kind of the drive to zero motto that the state's using to a data-driven approach to try and make roads and intersections safer. The city applied for and was awarded the assistance from KDOT in the form of traffic signs and the material to install the traffic signs at certain intersections throughout the city. Those intersections include Southeast 36th at Kansas Avenue, Southeast 24th at Kansas Avenue, East 12th and Old Trail Road, and North Main and Old Highway 81. The state would provide all the signs and materials. Newton staff would install those and maintain those as part of the agreement. And since that's part of what we do anyways on the street side of things, it's the cost, the financial implications is covered through our operating budget because we're going to be installing signs anyway, so there's not any impact to the budget per se. And so we would just ask that you would approve and sign this contract with KDOT.
Okay.
I move that we approve the contract with KDOT.
I would second. Oh.
You got a motion and a second. You pick. Any further discussion?
No.
I'm just saying I had to go look up what some of those sign letters and
the
numbers and all that. That was pretty cool. Good reading. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item is to consider a request to close Main Street from 5th to 8th Street, 6th Street from Oak to Poplar, Broadway from East and West Alleys, and 7th Street from Main to the West Alley on May 2nd for the Newton Car Show. Denise?
Yes, I think you've basically covered it. This is an annual request for the Newton Car Show, and we have sent the request off to KDOT and received the hearing back today that they have approved that. So they also are asking for some city assistance with picnic tables, trash cans, and welcome flags. And so staff has looked at this. All the departments that are involved in this have looked at this. It doesn't seem to be a problem, so would recommend approval of that.
I so move we approve.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Next item this evening is to establish February 10th as the hearing date for the Themian Park CDBG application. Daniela?
Yes, before I give you a little bit of information regarding the public hearing, I'd like to point out I made a mistake. I would like to change the public hearing date from the 10th to the 24th. So please keep that in mind when you make that motion. It is accurate in the public hearing document that is in your packet. On the agenda, it reflects the 10th. The reason for that, we were going back and forth of when we should do the public hearing, whether the 10th or the 24th. By extending it to the 24th, it gives us more time to publish in the paper and ensure that we're noticing up for our residents. I just didn't get it changed on the agenda. So as you know, the city is applying for a Kansas Community Development Block Grant, also known as a CDBG grant, for the construction of Phase 1 of Themian Park. As part of this process, the city is required to hold a public meeting to inform the residents of the project. The public hearings are mandatory for state CDBG grant applications to comply with federal regulations, requires citizen participation, it ensures transparency, and allows public input on community development needs and project proposals. These hearings inform residents about the available funds, eligible activities, and specific details about the project. So you'll learn all about what's in store for Themian Park Phase 1. This grant is called a Community Facilities Large Grant, and we will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, February 24th, 2026 at 7 p.m. here in Commission Chambers, 3rd floor of City Hall. So the action will be to establish February 24th as the hearing date for Themian Park CDBG application. Stand for any questions.
And call for a motion.
What was the LS in here?
It's a contract engineering term.
It says 1 LS. That's the only thing I.
Lump sum.
Oh. Yep. Oh. Lump sum.
Big brain.
I move.
Awesome. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Next item this evening is to receive an update on annual FAA Capital Improvement Program. Brian.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. This is our annual update that we do to, we have to submit on an annual basis to the FAA projects that we look for that to improve the airport's, most of their surfaces as part of their airport improvement program, as part of the airport trust fund. And so this is, as you have this document's put together for us by our consultants, HNTB, and they give us some funding. Right now, this is what it would cost today. As obviously you can look out and see the fuel farm tank replacement, that's in 2031. I'm guessing that number will change a little bit between now and 2031. So potentially, but it does give us a general idea of what we can expect the cost would be when it comes time to do the projects that we need to do at the airport. This is the one project on here. Some of this is kind of low-hanging fruit. The runway 826 PAPI replacement, the precision approach path indicator replacement, that kind of goes in line with the 826 reconstruction that we did. We have put this down as a federal project, but actually it's probably going to end up being a state project because it's kind of in their wheelhouse for the state's airport. But we have to start with the federal level and then work our way down, if you will. Taxiway C reconstruction is another one. We have actually reconstructed all of our surfaces, taxiways, runways, everything in the last 12 years, with the exception of Taxiway Charlie East. So that would be the taxiway east of runway 1735 connecting runway 826. That's one of those projects that is something we need to do, but it's one that doesn't score very high when the FAA puts numbers to it, and they have a scoring pattern that they use to decide whether they want discretionary funding and obviously you can see that that's a $3 million project. So it's a significant project that we'll keep an eye on, and we'll continue at the airport to try and maintain the taxiway as best we can until we can come up with some federal funding to actually replace it, because it would be a big ask for even for both of our local co-sponsors of the airport. Same with terminal reconstruction. The fuel farm is one that we've put down for 2031, but it actually, in fact, could become one of those projects that becomes more necessary sooner, if you will, because the tanks that are underground now have been in the ground for almost 30 years. And those tanks generally lifespan's about 25. So knock on wood, it's not a matter of if, just when. But we're doing everything we can to extend the life of those as long as possible. So, but that may be one project that comes back to you. And part of this is we work with the Director of Public Works and the city engineer to be on their capital improvement plan, so that when we start talking budgets and requirements and our budget talks and all of that year over year, we can look at this, and these projects would be included in those conversations as well. I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions?
No, I don't have any right now.
Do we need a motion to receive the report, or? No? Okay. Very good.
Thank you,
Brian.
Commissioners.
Right. Next item this evening is to consider an ordinance amending fines and penalties for code enforcement cases. Chris?
Thanks, Mayor. And this is a familiar item. We've dealt with it the last two city commission meetings. As you recall, we did a first read there at the end of December, and then we brought it forward for formal adoption on 1/13. And just as some background, this has to do with the prosecution of business entities for code enforcement violations, yard nuisances, those items. After adopting the ordinance, we looked at a few things and looked at the inconsistencies that the fines that were provided. So what we did is we spread the fines to make it consistent, whether it would fall under that business entity default fine, which is that $250 for a first offense. And then we spread that to all of the code violations so that it was equal and the same. So we established a minimum and maximum fine for a first, second, and third offense. We provided a red line that shows those edits. It provides more consistency and more clarity, and hopefully that's outlined in the red line. As we stated before, we're not going for fines on these offenses. We're going for compliance. So a successful case, if it gets to the point it gets to city court, is actually a dismissal And that's where we will oftentimes dismiss it with court costs, and the fine won't apply. But if someone is found guilty or pleads guilty or no contest to these offenses, these would be the fines, whether it's a default under the LLC or a regular person that goes through the process. I would stand for any questions on this.
Just for the room, it's purely only legal entities, businesses, not individuals.
No, and I'm sorry for not making that clear. The original ordinance was specific to business entities. What that created was an inconsistent fine structure to the business entities and an individual. So what we did is married those up so that it is consistent throughout. So whereas a fine for a nuisance may have had a minimum fine of $100 or $150, now it says $250 for a first, second, third, etc.
No matter if you're a private citizen
Exactly.
or a business.
No difference. It's based on the violation, and they're consistent throughout. And that's for the offenses that you see in our what we consider code offenses, whether it's nuisance, inoperable vehicle, even an illicit discharge, those types of offenses that Jerry typically and the rest of Ed's staff too.
Okay.
So this also includes nonprofit, right?
Anyone that would be charged with a code offense, a city code offense in Newton, non-code enforcement, the fines would be the same, right?
Okay, that's clear. I'm a kind of a visual person.
Sure.
So if I was a business person and Rich here was a resident and we both had, I guess, infractions, whatever you want to call them.
Right.
We would both be under this.
Right. And frankly, it's something I should have caught on the front end to provide that consistency.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the subject titles, what I was.
Sure.
And I was like a little unclear like he was, just. For prosecution of businesses. And so that's, since you've married both
Sure.
residents and businesses into one, would it just be environmental code violations and penalties without defining?
You're talking about the heading of the ordinance?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, that was the original heading that we came in with at the prior meeting, and then you have the repealers and amendment that essentially carries forward those fines. Yeah, we could include something about amending those fines. That will be in the summary that we send out for publication, but it is an amendment and repeal of the ones that are listed.
It more than doubles the penalty on a resident that has a nuisance vehicle or a lawn or whatever, so.
It does. And we can adjust those. Regardless of where they land, I would advocate that they be consistent.
No, I understand the need for them to be consistent so that you're not getting yourself in a jam as far as having two sets of rules.
Right.
I question 2.5 times what it was before.
If it would please the city commission, we could come back and show you all the other established fines that we have for other municipal court.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see that. I also would like to see numbers as far as individuals who were convicted and needed to pay the fine.
Sure.
Good idea.
So,
That's a good.
any other comments?
I like that idea.
Is there any, how does this compare? I would be interested in how it compares to area, just for comparison to some other area towns.
We can try and provide that as well.
I mean, this is basically 250, 500,000.
Right.
And just an example of how that is in, yeah.
You got it. Understand.
And remind us when you bring that, crosswalk it back to the fact that our community wants us to battle blight.
Understood.
That was part of the community survey.
Okay, if that's the will of the commission, I'd ask for a motion just to table this item. We can bring it back at our next meeting with that information that you want.
I move that we table this item and we'll bring it back in the future.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. Motion carries. Okay. Next item would be Citizens Forum. We didn't have discussions during the fireworks ordinance. That went really, really fast. I do believe we have a couple people in the room that did want to speak to that, so I'll go ahead and let you come on up.
I have laryngitis, I'm sorry. I did want to speak, but I just,
Can you state your name for the record, please?
Lisa Brown.
Thank you. Okay.
I had an elderly dog. He was 20 when he passed away. And that was my reason for coming was the PTSD, the older dogs, the people that have dementia, the war vets. So I am glad that some of the commissioners did listen to the people here and changed it, because it's not always about money. It's about our pets, and they're our family. So I am glad about that, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Edward Foth. I'd like to thank you for taking it back to 4 days. It looked like 64% of the people wanted it that way. I read 90 days in the paper. I was thinking, why not just declare war? I'm a Vietnam vet. I've got 70% VA disability for PTSD from Vietnam. I don't appreciate real loud noises. We've got a 13 and a half year old dog who's scared to death of thunder and fireworks. We have to medicate her during the thunder and during the 4th of July. I didn't want to have to meditate her for 9 days. So I say thank you for changing it.
Thank you for your service, Ed.
Yes, thank you.
All right. With that? That's it? Anyone else? Yep. All right. Anything? We'll go around the horn.
No, I just appreciate the city coming up with all this data for the fireworks so quickly and getting that information out to us as soon as they could. It was very helpful.
Rebecca?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No, sir.
Sir?
The coming signs of AI. Where the data came from.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's it.
I walked on the bike path today right before the meeting, and multiple people said, isn't it so nice that they plowed the bike path so we can get out and walk? Thank you.
I'll pass that along. Thank you.
I do too appreciate the extra information that was provided on the fireworks. And I am very thankful. I didn't expect it. Honestly, I didn't. But I say thank you to my co-commissioners. Thank you.
What? Sorry, can I?
Well,
I was going to say one. I forgot one.
No, go ahead.
I just
Go
want to
ahead.
be. If you want to change my mind, bring me more facts. That's the.
Well, I just appreciate it. Very encouraging. Very encouraging. So thank you for those who put that information out there. When you said it, I think you said Friday or Saturday, you would look for information on Monday. Well, I went and grabbed my pad, and then I read and it said wait till Monday that you would have it. I was really excited to see. I didn't know what I was going to see, but thank you. I really appreciate it. And thank you to my co-commissioners.
Yeah, I mean, I really am digging Placer on a lot of our different projects and everything, being able to dive in and get that data. Again, I'm a very data-driven person. I'm also a person that establishes a plan and works the plan, so it kind of caught me off guard tonight, but I think it came out pretty good. So with that, we are adjourned.